Welcome, everyone. This is the Masterclass. My name is Patricknazareth. I have around 30 years of teaching experience and I would like to help dispel your doubts, should you have any. Today, we are going to study Julius Caesar, specifically Act 1, Scene 2. We start by taking a look at the historical context. At the time we are speaking about, Rome was a republic. The king of Rome had been deposed, removed almost 500 years ago, and the word king was the most hated word at that time. A republican government, a government run by the people themselves who elected the councils, were in power at Rome. At this particular point of time, Caesar's importance, Caesar's power was growing, and a lot of people were opposed to it. The crown is offered to Caesar, and that is taken as a red flag by many. This is the longest and most important scene in this particular act. It shows us Caesar at the height of his power, and it also shows us the beginning of the conspiracy that is being formed against him. There are very many events covered in this, like the procession of Caesar, the soothsayer's warning, the way Cassius is tempted by Brutus, Casca's report on how the crown was offered to Caesar, there is Caesar's suspicion of Cassius, and finally, the conspiracy plans are laid. Scene 2 is important. Why? Because it introduces Caesar not just as a character, it gives us Caesar's physical weaknesses, and we can contrast this with his formal power. It establishes Brutus as a person of importance. It reveals Cassius as the brain behind the conspiracy. The crown incident shows us Caesar's character. Is he ambitious or not? He sets the entire assassination plan in motion. To summarize this then, a procession is taking place. Soothsayer warns Caesar. He does not heed the warning. Cassius is talking to Brutus in order to get him to come over to his side. He is forming a conspiracy against Caesar because he doesn't want Caesar to be king. He is perhaps jealous as well. Caesar shows signs of physical weaknesses. He has an epileptic fit, and how Cassius reveals how previously also he had seen Caesar falling victim to weakness, falling victim to sickness. The first 24 lines of this particular act show us, of this particular scene, show us Caesar talking to Calpurnia, talking to Antony, asking him to make sure to touch her while he runs during the Rupercal festival, because he is superstitious, his wife is barren, he is sure she will bear a child if Antony were to perform all rituals accurately and properly. Also, the soothsayer in the crowd cries out a warning. He is brought before Caesar, but Caesar dismisses his warning as of no consequence. In lines 25 to 177, we are left behind with Brutus and Cassius. Cassius notices that Brutus is worried about something, and he instantly links it to how Caesar is perceived as perhaps having the powers of a king. And he begins to manipulate Brutus because he wants him to be a part of his conspiracy. How does he do it? He uses different techniques. The first is the mirror technique, where he tells Brutus that people cannot really understand their own importance until it is shown to them in the eyes of other people. Then he continues, telling Brutus two stories about Caesar. The first concerns the time when they had a competition at swimming across the Tiber River. The Tiber was stormy, was in spate. Caesar challenged Cassius to swim across the river. When they did, Caesar faced a problem, and Cassius was the one who rescued him and brought him to shore safely, just like Aeneas, their ancestor, had brought his father to safety when Troy burned. The second story concerns the time when Caesar had fallen sick while he was in campaign with Cassius. How Cassius had noticed how this man had become so weak that he literally shook with fever. So he has seen him at his most vulnerable. Then he appeals to Brutus's sense of history. It was Brutus's ancestor who took the lead in deposing the last king. He said, "Your ancestors have done so. Would you like to have a new king?" Brutus obviously does not. What is Brutus's response but? He doesn't commit. He is not saying no to Cassius, nor is he saying yes. But Cassius has very effectively planted the seed of suspicion, of fear in Brutus. This is the time they hear shouting from far away. Cassius tells Brutus perhaps they are actually thinking about making him king. When they come back, let us catch hold of Casca and he will tell us exactly what has happened. Lines 178 to 294. Caesar returns. He is looking angry, and the people around him, Antony, Calpurnia, Cicero, and others, are looking worried. Caesar notices Cassius and Brutus standing together, and he mentions to Antony that he doesn't really trust Cassius. He is worried that such people like Cassius, would be harmful to him. They would try and conspire against him. Antony tells him not to worry. Cassius is a good Roman and will do nothing of that sort. Casca is pulled aside, the others pass on. Then Casca is asked to report on what he has seen, and he tells Brutus and Cassius about the crown incident, about how the crown was offered to Caesar thrice. Each time, Caesar refused. What was the crown? It was basically a coronet. Antony pretended to offer to him. Caesar refused it 3 times. Casca says that each time it appeared as if he said no just that bit more reluctantly. The crowd, of course, went wild at this. They knew he had the power. They knew he had the strength to be king. But here was a man so humble that he was not accepting the crown even when everyone was offering it to him. Now, when they cried out his name, when they applauded, he appeared to faint. Caesar was a victim of epilepsy, where your hands and feet shake uncontrollably. You fall down frothing at the mouth. Remember, this happened in front of the public. So when Caesar gets up, he asks them to forgive him for showing them his weakness. He opens his shirt and bares his throat, saying that if you think I am weak, please kill me now. The crowd, of course, loves this even more, and they forgive him with all their hearts. Casca also informs them that the 2 tribunes, which we have talked about in scene 1, they were punished, Marullus and Flavius. Why? Because they removed the decorations that were set out on statues. In lines 295 to 323, we have Cassius alone on the stage. He addresses us, the audience, in a soliloquy, and he lays bare his plans, the conspiracy to assassinate and remove Caesar. His plan hinges on bringing Brutus into this assassination attempt. How is he going to do that? He is going to play on Brutus's honor. He is going to write letters, forged letters in somebody else's name, in the names of citizens, and he is going to leave them where Brutus can read them and understand that the people are calling him to action. It shows us how manipulative Cassius is, how he is willing to use deception in order to achieve his target. He is not worried about manipulating people. He knows that people like Brutus can be manipulated because they set such a high standard for themselves. They have such high ideals of honor that they don't really think things through. They can easily be turned to whatever purpose is required. The first hint of an organized conspiracy is given here. The literary devices that Shakespeare has used here. Metaphor, where take, for example, what Cassius says. Why, man, he doth bestride the narrow world like a colossus, and we, petty men, walk under his huge legs, where he compares Caesar to a colossus, or the mirror imagery that he uses to try and show Brutus in what honor and respect he is held by people. There are rhetorical questions. Specifically, when we look at Cassius's persuasive technique that he uses on Brutus, he keeps on asking him questions that demand no answers but make Brutus think. For example, why should that name be sounded more than yours? Dramatic irony. We know that Shakespeare is setting Julius Caesar up to die, and yet when we hear the soothsayer say, "Beware the Ides of March," Caesar cannot take this as a warning. Antithesis. Look at Cassius. He keeps on saying Brutus and Caesar. Look at Caesar. He compares fat versus thin and hungry when he's talking about Cassius. The contrasts bring out everything. There is allusion, not just when Cassius has compared Caesar to Colossus, but even when he compares himself to Aeneas in the lines, "I, as Aeneas, our great ancestor." Personification, Cassius giving the Tiber a gender, her, or giving it an emotion, troubled. Imagery, the crowd's stinking breath, as Casca says. The stormy water, as Cassius informs Brutus. There is pun and wordplay on the word falling sickness, where we understand that Caesar is actually a victim of epilepsy. But Cassius is trying to show us, to say that better men than him, perhaps like Brutus, Casca, and Cassius himself will be forced to fall at Caesar's feet. The symbolism of the crown being offered to Caesar. And then repetition. For example, the word Rome comes up many times, giving us the concept of honor for which it is worth dying for. The words Brutus and Caesar used again and again, trying to get Brutus to understand. Why is it that 2 names, 2 very simple names, but yet one is given a lot of power and one is not? What are the themes that Shakespeare brings up in Act 1, Scene 2 of Julius Caesar? Firstly, faith versus free will. What does the soothsayer say? Beware the Ides of March. What does Cassius say? Fault in ourselves, not in our stars. So one leaves everything in the hands of the god, faith and free will. Cassius trying to show Brutus whatever they decide will happen. There is the public self versus the private self. You see how confident Caesar is in public, but we see his private fears when he tells Antony about Cassius. Ambition. Caesar desires the kingship. Manipulation and rhetoric. How does Cassius use persuasive techniques to convince Brutus to join the conspiracy? Honor and nobility. This is the defining characteristic of Brutus that Cassius exploits for his own ends. Loyalty and friendship. Brutus is a very close friend of Caesar, yet he worships the idea of Rome. How did this conflict play out? Mortality versus divinity. Caesar is given a godlike image, but we know that he has weaknesses. In this very scene, for example, we are told that he is deaf in one ear also. Envy and resentment. Cassius has personal reasons to be jealous of Caesar, but this is disguised as political concern for the faith of Rome. Let us now take a look at all the characters associated in this scene and their personality traits as brought out in this particular scene. Julius Caesar. We are given his physical characteristics, how he's deaf in left ear, how he has epilepsy, how he is subject to fevers. We are given his personality traits. He is powerful and authoritative. He commands attention and everyone obeys him. He is superstitious. He believes that Antony touching California can make her pregnant. He is proud. He dismisses the soothsayer's warning as that of a person who dreams. Perceptive. He correctly judges Cassius for what he is. Contradictory. He claims not to fear anything, but we can see that he is actually concerned about people like Cassius. So the significance of this character is that he is presented as both powerful and vulnerable, which sets up the rest of the play. Marcus Brutus, who is a tragic hero here. What is his personality traits? Noble, honorable. All he is concerned about is with the honor of Rome and his family. Internal conflict. His friendship with Caesar versus his love for Rome are clashing with each other. He's a thoughtful and philosophical man. He does not commit himself easily. He wants to think things through before doing anything. He is proud of his reputation. He worries about what other people think about him. He understands his family's importance. He is reserved. He does not admit his feelings in public. He keeps it private. What is his significance? His noble character, his honorable trait, his concern for Rome leads him to join the conspiracy. But this is the very reason why he is able to be manipulated so easily by Cassius. His honor is responsible for his downfall. Caius Cassius. He comes across as a master manipulator. What are his personality traits? He is envious and resentful of Caesar and Caesar's power. He is manipulative and cunning. He knows how to use people, how to bend people to his way of thinking. He is observant and calculating. He notices that Brutus is troubled and he sets himself to try and turn Brutus towards the conspiracy. He is both passionate and persuasive. He uses emotional stories. He appeals to both logic and emotion. He is a good speaker. He is cynical. His viewpoint of people is very simple, how he can use them for his own goals. His physical appearance, we know that he has a lean and hungry look, as Caesar says, and he doesn't smile often. He is the person who sets the conspiracy in motion. Without him, Brutus would never have joined. He is basically the polar opposite of Brutus. Mark Antony, the friend. He is a physically fit and active person. He has been chosen to run in the Lupercal festival, remember? Caesar trusts him implicitly. He is loyal to Caesar, obedient to his will. He will do anything for him. He offers Caesar the crown as well. He is politically aware. He understands that even though the crown has to be offered publicly, it must also be declined. He is part of Caesar's inner circle. He is a pleasure-loving man. Caesar tells us how he loves plays and music. He looks after himself. He is a well-groomed person. Antony is just a loyal, fun-loving friend. In this particular scene, he goes on to become someone much more important in the later part of the play. Casca, who is a cynical observer of everything that goes on around him. What are his traits? He's a blunt and sarcastic person. He speaks plainly. He speaks roughly. He has no pretense. He does not bother about being polite. He is contemptuous of the common people. He doesn't like them. He compares them to a theater audience, basically, who clap when they're supposed to clap, who cry when they're supposed to cry. He's observant but cynical. He notices how the crown is offered to Caesar, and he observes very clearly how Caesar would like to take it, but doesn't. He's an honest reporter. He tells people what he sees accurately. He doesn't hide any details. He's a willing conspirator. Later on, we will see how he joins the plot. Not for any noble reasons like Brutus, not philosophical reasons at all either. It is simply that he's a practical and bitter person. He is the representation of the entire bitter, disillusioned Roman who joins the conspiracy, and he provides the audience with eyewitness accounts. Minor characters, the soothsayer and Calpurnia. The soothsayer exists to warn Caesar about the conspiracy that will happen against him on the Ides of March. Calpurnia, his wife, she has a limited role in this scene. She simply exists to let us know that Caesar has no children and how he is superstitious enough to ask Antony to touch her so that she perhaps can get pregnant. Right, since this is one of the most important scenes, we have picked out certain key passages, the lines from these. We have explained them looking at who is speaking them, what is the context, their meaning, their significance, and what is a literary device also in them. You can pause your video and look at these key passages. a vocabulary list. Shakespeare uses Old English. There are some words that are used in such a way that are no longer relevant in today's world. Therefore, I have given you those words and I've given you their meanings that will help you study the lesson better. Please take your time to look over them and understand them while reading the play. Lastly, I have given you some exam tips. What do examiners actually look for? First, they want you to look at the way Cassius manipulates Brutus. Especially, we look at the Colossus speech. Thirdly, they like to ask about Caesar's character. Fourthly, they want you to understand how Casca reports the incident of Caesar being offered the crown. Fifthly, the internal conflict of Brutus, where he is torn between loyalty to his friend and loyalty to Rome. Lastly, the fault, dear Brutus philosophy, the key theme of faith versus free will. Here, I have left you some practice questions that might come up in the examination. Please do go through them, the questions, and then look at the answers. You will be able to get a good base if this scene does come up during the examinations. You can pause your video and look at these. That's the lesson there for you then. I do hope I have been of help. If I have, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. Remember, there are others who would be requiring our help. Thank you so much for watching.